Hello, my grasshoppers. I know I just saw you, World Studies, but like I said, I need to record this video for you because I'm in a meeting. It's pretty important all day tomorrow, for the first half of the day tomorrow. So I'm going to have to take you guys through this first part of the Protestant Reformation like this, okay? So yesterday we talked about Martin Luther and why he began his challenge of the Catholic Church. You know, what shady practices the Catholic Church had already begun. And so again, you're really going to get a sense of the power struggle that starts to emerge from all of this, all right? So this recording is meant to replace the lecture that you would otherwise get from me, okay? I'm going to share a screen for the majority of the time here so that you guys can follow along with me as I go through the information. We're going to begin at the module that we were with yesterday. So right here, if you want to follow along, or go back later, I should say, and look at it. So we talked about relics yesterday and, you know, how they were used to make money. And remember, a lot of the stuff that Martin Luther is really upset about with this, with the Catholic Church, has got to do with turning the religion into a money-making thing. As a review, you remember that the Catholic Church was one of the most powerful entities in Europe, and they're not going to give up that power without a fight. And they had been making a lot of money on the very things that Martin Luther was upset about, okay? So another thing that was mentioned, and it was mentioned in the reading, you need to know about this, was the sale of indulgences, okay? And think about the word indulgence, okay? The word indulgence, to indulge in something, like, I want to indulge, right? Like, what does that mean, right? If you indulge in a chocolate sundae or something, you're just like, oh, right? And indulgence is the idea you get to indulge in sin, okay? So remember that the Catholic Church at the time, remember we're talking like 500 years ago, they needed money to build a really big, fancy church in Rome. St. Peter's Basilica is still there, okay? And it costs a lot of money to do that. So the Pope's like, all right, let's raise the money. They're using relics, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to see kind of some of this stuff in the video clips that I'm going to want you to watch later in this lesson, okay? But indulgences are basically get out of purgatory free cards. So one of the things that you guys are going to need to understand, and let me bring up the whiteboard for this, okay, is that when it comes to the Catholic belief in how we, you know, where people are, we just barely scratched the surface on this earlier. The Catholics believe that there's heaven and that there's hell, right? And that only the like real scumbags go to hell, right? The axe murderers, the Adolf Hitlers, the people that like eat children, whatever, okay? Most of us are not evil enough to go straight to hell. But most of us are not good enough to go to heaven when we die either. We're not like, you know, Mother Teresa or Saint Sebastian or like any of the saints that the Catholic Church has, where these are people whose lives were so amazing. They were so self-denying and they did all the sacraments just right, blah, 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 that like they were good enough to go right to heaven. Well, most of us, you and me, we're just kind of your average scumbag, right? Like, so we sin, but we're not axe murderers, but we're not good enough to go right to heaven. So the Catholic Church invented this place called purgatory. Now, purgatory does not exist in the Bible. It's been added to the Bible. It's part of church tradition. But if you remember from the world religions unit that I taught you, that for Catholics, church tradition plus the Bible, they both have a lot of weight in determining your ability to get into heaven. Okay, so the church, who controls the sacraments, part of the deal is that they created this place called purgatory, and the belief is that for average scumbags like you and me, who sin, you know, pretty regularly, but not enough to go to hell, we're going to go to this mid-level place called purgatory, where we're going to have to spend a certain amount of time, depending on how many sins you've accumulated in your life, that you're going to have to burn off. It's going to be painful. You're going to be like, wah, wah, in purgatory, but like it's going to end. And then eventually you'll be clean enough to go to heaven. Okay. None of that is in the Bible, but it's part of church tradition. They just kind of came up with that logically. Okay. And so what the indulgence is supposed to do indulgences are supposed to be get out of purgatory free cards. Okay. So if you knew you were going to sin, like let's say you look at somebody else in town and you're like, oh, like I know that she really likes me and we got to get together, right? We need to like get after it. But you know that's a sin, like under church rules, you're not supposed to have premarital sex or anything like that. You can buy an indulgence. So after you and the other person got done doing the deed, right, you can be like, oh, I feel bad. I know Jesus wouldn't like that. So I can go to the local church and buy an indulgence, which is a get out of purgatory free card. It's like that sin I just committed, I can wipe it away so it doesn't count against me in purgatory if I buy an indulgence, right? And it'll look like a letter that's signed by the bishop or something. And like every time you do that, you can buy an indulgence to wipe your sin away so you don't have to pay for it in purgatory. Well, do I need to tell you guys how popular this is going to be? Like this is a money maker, money maker. This is like show me the money. Because come on, man, how many of us want to sin like that and not have it counted against us, right? And so, that's a thing. And the other thing, though, that you could do with indulgences, and this has really irritated Martin Luther, like all of this, is that you could buy a family member that's already dead out of purgatory. So, like, you're going to see this in the film clip that you watch later in this period. Like, when the indulgence salesman's like, look, buy this, and your ornery Aunt Mabel, who died like 5 years ago and is in purgatory right now, because she was so terrible. Like you can buy her out of that. Buy this indulgence and then she, boom, right? There was even a saying, like one of the most famous indulgence salesmen, and he was mentioned in your reading, and you're going to see him in the film clip, one of the film clips I've embedded, named John Tetzel. Right? He even had a slogan. When a coin in the coffer rings, a coffer is like a box that you put money into. When a coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory springs. Yeah, right? He even had a slogan, okay? Like, right? Just like modern television where 773-202, Luna, right? It's a slogan. It's an advertisement, right? And so these were money makers for the church. And again, Martin Luther's like, that's not what the church is supposed to be about. The church is supposed to be about spirituality and worshiping Jesus and praying and blah, blah, blah. And you're turning it into a money game. And he hated that. So let me stop this share. Go back to this share. Praying to the saints. That was another thing. The Catholic Church, and again, you'll see this in one of the film clips, like, under church, kind of like traditional Catholic Church dogma, it goes back to what I was just showing you. Because we're average scumbags and we've sinned too much, like our prayers might not be heard by God because they're not clean enough. So what you do is you pray to a saint to pray for you. And that's why people pray to the Virgin Mary, or they pray to St. Peter or whatever, so that they can pray for you. Well, the Catholic Church was taking advantage of that by creating little statues of the saints and selling them that you can pray to, okay? Later on, Martin Luther's going to be like, you don't need to pray to like St. Peter, or you don't need to pray to the Virgin Mary. When you're doing that, you're actually breaking the first commandment because you're not supposed to pray to a man or a woman. You're supposed to pray to God. You're supposed to pray to Jesus directly, to God the Father, right? And so Martin Luther is going to like kind of be turned off by the idea of praying to saints as well, when I mentioned to you guys weaponizing the sacraments, what I mean by that is because the Catholic Church controls the sacraments, baptism, communion, confession, anointing with the sick, right? Because they control all those things, you have to go through them in order to go to heaven. So the Catholic Church controls the narrative. And what Martin Luther is going to do is he's going to open up that. He's going to like free people, if you will, from having to do the sacraments the way the Catholic Church tells you. And the corruption of church officials, like you're really going to see this also in that first clip that I embed in your in the next module, that you know, some of these priests or popes, like Luther's going to take a famous, what we call pilgrimage to Rome, okay? And a pilgrimage is a religious journey. And Rome was considered the holy city, all right? You want to go there. And when Luther visits it, as you'll see in the first clip, he is astounded by what he sees, right? He sees like priests sleeping with prostitutes. He sees people selling indulgences. He sees a pope acting more like a warrior than a pope. Like you'll see in the video, the pope is dressed in like golden armor. Like, why are you dressed in golden armor? You're supposed to be the pope. You're not some warrior king, right? And so he's looking at all this saying, man, the church has lost its way. And that's why he went to try and tell the pope about all this stuff. Like, look, Catholic Church has lost its way. Let's fix it. Remember that Luther wanted to reform the church, not replace it. He didn't want to replace the Catholic Church. He wanted to fix it. Hence, Protestant Reformation. Okay? Well, once all these things really, really bothered Luther, right? Once he like saw them and decided to break with the church, that's when things really, they get real, okay? The break begins with this, the 95 Theses. Now, in the packet that I had you guys read for homework that was due the last time I saw you, I actually include some samples from the 95 Theses that we're going to kind of look at together next week as a document analysis. But the 95 Theses, the way the story goes is Luther was so sick and disgusted by what he saw, and you're going to see this in the video. There'll be it's one of the scenes I show you in the video that are embedded in the next lesson. That Luther, the story goes that he takes, he writes 95 criticisms of the Catholic Church. Think of it as a list of 95 things that I hate about you, Catholic Church, okay? And indulgences is all throughout the document, right? But there are other things like relics and like, you know, priests not living up to their priestly vows, all right? All the problems he has with the Catholic Church, he makes 95 of them, right? Think about if somebody made 95 complaints about you, okay? And he nails it to the church in Wittenberg, okay? In Wittenberg, Germany. He's, you know, right? Nails it to the church and for everybody to see. And by doing that, he like effectively signs his own death warrant. He tries to, yes, he touches off the Protestant Reformation. He definitely does. But the problem is now the Catholic Church is out to get him. And there are two things that the Catholic Church could do to you if they wanted, all right? Let me stop a minute and go back to the whiteboard. Clear. So the Catholic Church could excommunicate, right? What that meant is you were kicked out of the Catholic Church like forever. And if you're kicked out of the Catholic Church, that means you can't take the sacraments. And if you can't take the sacraments, if you remember what I taught you guys about the difference between Protestants and Catholics, Catholics believe that the sacraments actually have some saving value to get you to heaven, to get you to purgatory and to heaven. So if you kick somebody out of the Catholic Church, they can't take the sacraments. If you can't take the sacraments, you can't go to heaven. So people took excommunication very seriously. Martin Luther is going to get excommunicated by the Pope. The Pope's going to be like, "You're out." And you know what Martin Luther's response is going to be? "I don't care. Ha ha, I bite my thumb at you." Remember that? All right? Like he's going to be like, "You're shady." And he's going to realize it. And he's like, "I'm going to start my own version of Christianity anyway." Okay? The other thing that the Catholic Church could try to do is they could kill you. Usually this is done through something called the Inquisition. They would call you into this court and they would try to like find you guilty of being what is known as, they would label you a heretic, okay? And a heretic is somebody that is an enemy of the faith. And so Martin Luther was quickly labeled an enemy of the faith because of his disagreements with the Catholic Church. So they wanted to hunt him down. And as you guys know, he was eventually tracked down at the Diet of Worms. Remember how that is pronounced, Diet of Worms. And the Catholic Church put him on trial. And there was this famous moment when Martin Luther is standing there. And essentially he says, if you guys can find in the Bible that anything I'm saying is wrong in Scripture, I'll go quietly. Take me into custody, whatever. And all the Catholic Church scholars sitting there were like, they didn't know what to say to that because they knew that a lot of their stuff was stuff they added to the Bible, right? It wasn't in there. And so they were like, oh, we can't get this guy. And they had to let him go for the moment. But knowing that they would be coming to get him, to kill him, one of the princes in Germany took an interest, one of the like rulers of the small like city states in Germany, if you will, like small little, like, remember there's no Germany, there's German states. Well, one of the rulers of those took Martin Luther in and hid him from the Catholic Church because he knew that if he didn't hide Martin Luther, the church would come him and find him and kill him. All right. So Martin Luther had to go into hiding. While he was in hiding, okay, he famously, and circle this in blood, this is super important, grasshoppers. While Luther was in hiding, he famously translated the Bible from Latin to vernacular. That's a sexy word. Everybody at home say vernacular. Like, hey, baby, you speak my vernacular. All right. And what vernacular means, it just means the language of the people in a given region. So the vernacular of people in France is French. The vernacular of the people living in the German states is German, which is where he first translated. He translated the Bible to German. And the vernacular for people living in England is English, right? So that's all the word vernacular means. It means the common language of the people. You guys remember that prior to this, the Bible was in Latin. Common people couldn't read the Bible. First of all, they couldn't read, but they definitely couldn't read Latin. Well, now that books are more available and the printing press has made knowledge more available through books, the only like safeguard the Catholic Church had anymore where they could control the message was because they knew Latin and the rest of us didn't, okay? So Martin Luther's like, I got a fix for that. Because I'm a genius, which he was, he translated the Bible from Latin into German. Unbelievable. So now anybody in Germany who speaks and reads German can read it. And then it got translated again. It got translated into French, and then it got translated into English. And before you know it, the Bible is readily available. And because of the printing press, it's everywhere now. It's not just the only Bible you ever see is in church. And so now more and more people can read the Bible for themselves. And you know what they're finding out? They're finding out the priests have been lying to them, right? That some of what is being said, for example, like the existence of purgatory, is nowhere in the Bible. And if purgatory is not in the Bible, then why do you need indulgences? You guys get the picture? And if you could read the Bible for yourself, you don't need the priest to interpret the Bible. And so all of this is really causing problems for the Catholic Church. And that's why they want to kill them, but they can't get their hands on them. All right. And so this translating of the Bible into the common language for everybody was a huge moment. It was a huge equalizing moment, if you will. All right. In the history of Europe. Now, I'm going to move us even further along here with the screen share. Pretty soon, the idea that you can read the Bible and understand it yourself, and that only things in the Bible should be what Christians follow, right? Not all the stuff that the Catholic Church added, because the stuff that the Catholic Church added, is for their own purposes. That's what the Catholic Church was using to manipulate people. And the idea that all you need is the Bible is known as sola scriptura in Latin, means scripture alone. Let me repeat that for you taking your notes. Scripture alone. And that's the reason why today Protestants are more likely, because the people that follow Martin Luther, remember, are called Protestants, or those who protest. The reason why Protestants today are more likely to be fundamentalist, if you guys remember this from our discussion at the beginning of the year, it's because fundamentalists are people who believe every word of the Bible. Well, because people can read the Bible for themselves now, they don't need the priest, the Catholic Church, right? That's why later Protestants are going to be likelier to be fundamentalists. It's the idea of sola scriptura, though. Read the Bible for yourself. You don't need a priest to interpret it, and therefore you don't have a priest lying to you, okay? And he also came up with the idea of sola fide, or faith alone saves you. Remember this discussion from Christianity at the beginning of the school year? Okay, faith alone saves you. So if you don't need the sacraments to get you into heaven, it's your faith. Now, you still will do some of the sacraments to prove that you have faith, but they don't save you. That means the Catholic Church no longer has the power to determine your fate, right? Your faith is what saves you. What does that do? That is an equalizing effect. Take a look at this. If you can read the Bible for yourself, and it's faith that saves you, not the rules of the Catholic Church, then that means that even peasants have the power to go to heaven if they just can read the Bible for themselves, right? And that's an equalizing effect. No longer can the priest or the Pope himself even determine your fate, because they control the car keys, all right, to the car that gets you to heaven. Now everybody has access to that car. And so it's a very equalizing effect of the whole situation. And that's why Luther starts his Reformation. Now, why do I write anti-Semitism here? This is why, before you get too carried away thinking Luther is a hero, because I know that, like, in the videos that I embedded, when you watch them, he's going to look very heroic, all right? It's the bias of the director that made that film that I put examples of in your next module. I want you to understand that Martin Luther, keep in mind he's a German monk, right, in Germany. He was of the belief that the reason why the Jews who were living in the German states at the time, he believed that the reason that those Jews hadn't accepted Christianity yet is because they were getting a foul version of Christianity, like the Catholic version was tainted. And that if we could, once Martin Luther showed the correct version of Christianity without the Catholic's influence on it, that Jews would convert to Christianity. That's what he thought. And when Jewish people didn't convert after he started his movement, his response was, let's burn down all of the Jewish synagogues and kick them out of the German states. That's anti-Semitic, okay? And so despite all these heroic things that Martin Luther was doing to try and clean up Christianity, the fact that he persecuted the Jews is just, that's part of that long heritage in Germany of persecuting Jewish people that's going to like leave a breadcrumb trail that leads all the way eventually to the Holocaust hundreds of years later. So you need to understand that historical connection, all right? Because Martin Luther, as far as German people are concerned, is like a hero because he started the Protestant Reformation in their country. Okay, so if he's saying Jews got to go, then that's like something that we're going to believe long term, right? So this is a dangerous precedent to set 500 years ago by Martin Luther when it comes to Jewish people. So I'm going to kind of now move to this last one here. Okay. Here's my chance to have you guys just kind of pause my video right now and then watch these two film clips. It'll take you about 15 minutes, but it puts together everything I just taught you nicely. Like you'll really get a kind of look at this whole process and how Martin Luther turns against the Catholic Church. So watch those two videos and then come back to me. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so you should be done watching the videos. And now what I'm going to do is, you know, I've got these consideration questions there. And if we were in class, I'd be asking you and talking about like what kinds of corruption did Luther see in video one, right? You know, and what did you notice about John Tetzel's indulgence sales technique, right? Hopefully you kind of noticed he sounded almost like a used car salesman, right? He's like tonight and only tonight, right? Like he's selling these things, okay? And did you notice the printing press in the videos, right? And how it spreads Luther's ideas and his challenges to the Catholic Church, okay? So eventually what happens is the Protestant Reformation spreads all throughout Europe. And this map really shows you where it spreads. You know, that's what I've got down here underneath this map. You see the printing press's influence on this. And you'll notice by looking at this map that the green areas are areas that stayed mostly Catholic, right? So that's really Southern Europe, right? Italy, Spain. I know France isn't in Southern Europe, but like it really is holding on strong here. And by the way, you'll notice this light color of blue. This is the Muslim Ottoman Empire. So it's still on the outskirts of Europe, kind of like watching as all the Christians fight and kill each other. Okay. And as this thing starts to spread, right, it comes intertwined with the politics. Okay. So one of the things you read, and I want you to take note of it from your packet that you did for homework for me, is the so-called Peasants' War. As a result of Luther's ideas, I mean, you guys can imagine if the peasants suddenly realize, hey, the Catholic Church has been lying to me. Oh, and by the way, the Catholic Church is in bed with the nobles who also rule over me. So if Martin Luther is saying, rise up against the church, he also must mean rise up against the nobles. And so the peasants in the German states start rising up to start a war against the nobles who have been controlling them all this time. And I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. You're like, this is it. This is the moment when feudalism falls apart. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disappoint you guys. This is not when feudalism falls apart. Because what ends up happening is Martin Luther does not support the peasants' revolts. Because his goal was to fix Christianity, not end feudalism. And so when the peasants rose up, he didn't support them, but all the nobles who have all the weapons and the armies, right, they all get together and crush the peasant revolt. It kills thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and feudalism is going to be able to hang on for another couple hundred years as a result, because you know, even though we're challenging the authority of the Catholic Church, right, the authority of the nobles is not ready to go down yet, all right? The peasants just aren't quite there yet. And the middle class isn't large enough yet to lead them. So we're getting there, but it's not time yet to bring down feudalism. That being said, as a result of sola scriptura, and the idea is all you need is scripture alone, different groups of people started to interpret Christianity differently, and they started to form their own versions of Christianity that today we call denominations, okay? And you can see that these denominations by color, where they caught on throughout Europe. And what was really the first denomination I'm going to teach you guys about is Lutheran. And obviously named after Martin Luther, but the Lutheran version of Christianity, you can see it in pink here, starts catching on at first in the German states that were known as the Holy Roman Empire at the time. Okay, and some of the rulers within the Holy Roman Empire of these small like German states, they were tired of having to listen to what a pope in Rome said and why do we got to listen to Rome? We're in Germany. Right? We're German. And so they started to break away. They adopted the Lutheran religion, not only as a way to challenge, like from a religious point of view, but from a political point of view. They're not going to be ruled by Rome anymore. And any money they collect in church is going to stay in the German states and no longer going to go to Rome. Okay. And so, Rome doesn't like that, and the Pope doesn't like that. They're losing money, and the wars, guys, are going to be fought over this, okay? And the fact that these German states are all right next to each other, and some of them are Protestant and some of them are Catholic, is going to cause a lot of fighting. And I told you, the Muslims here along the outskirts are watching the situation very carefully and being like, ha-ha, all the Christians are going to kill each other, and then we're going to expand the Ottoman Empire. So, like, this is all religious war stuff that's going on. So the Lutheran religion, remember that Martin Luther didn't want to replace Catholicism. He wanted Catholicism. He wanted to fix it. So when he created his version of Christianity called Lutheran, he basically made it look exactly like the Catholic Church with some key differences. Faith alone saves you. And anything that gets added to the Bible, we're going to kind of get rid of. Like, for example, nowhere in the Bible does it say that a priest can't get married. So Martin Luther was like, any Lutheran priests or Lutheran ministers, as they're going to be called, you guys can get married. It doesn't say in the Bible you can't get married. Martin Luther himself got married. And so, they started challenge some of the basics of the Catholic Church. However, Martin Luther liked the style of the Catholic Church. So if you were to go into a Lutheran church today, you would still see nice building, stained glass windows, minister up front wearing robes, altar, candlesticks. It would look very Catholic, but they don't have the same beliefs, okay? Because in Lutheran version, you're able to, faith is what saves you. You're able to get married as a minister, right? Certain changes like that, and the Bible's not in Latin, although in Catholic churches today it's not really in Latin anyway most of the time. But these are changes that Lutherans made. But you can think of it as almost Catholic light with some of these changes. That's what the Lutherans did. But as people kept interpreting the Bible for themselves because of sola scriptura, other versions of Christianity showed up as well, like Anglican. Okay. And the Anglican Church is the Church of England in blue up here. The Anglican Church started over a divorce, okay? And some of you guys have heard this story, but I'm going to kind of tell it real quickly. So the King of England, Henry VIII, Henry VIII, I am, Henry VIII, I am, was unhappy with his first wife because she couldn't give him a son. Like, he wanted a son, and he also kind of had his eye on other women, and like he used the excuse that she couldn't give him a son as a reason to want to get to want a divorce, to want to get the marriage ended. But the Pope said you can't. First of all, the Catholic Church doesn't believe in a divorce. And secondly, you're a ruler, you're a king in England, Henry VIII, and you're supposed to be an example for the people. So no, you cannot have a divorce. And so Henry VIII said, oh yeah, well, I'm getting a divorce anyway. And since Martin Luther's already started this process in the German states, we're going to have our own church here in England. And it'll be known as Anglican. Church of England. And it will be Protestant. It won't be Catholic. Just like the Lutherans are Protestant, we're also going to be Protestant. But we're going to call ourselves Anglicans. And it will be the official religion of England. And so now you've got this situation where literally a version of Christianity is being introduced over the simple issue of divorce. And Henry VIII, by the way, is going to end up either imprisoning or killing several different wives who won't give him the man-child that he wants, okay? So that, because you got to have a son if he's going to inherit the throne. And he blames the women when really the problem was with him, okay, in producing a male child. And he'll go through several wives, right? And he'll end up having a couple of different daughters. And when Henry VIII finally dies, one of those daughters, named Mary, is going to be Catholic, okay? Because some of the women that Henry's going to marry are going to be Catholic-leaning women. And so one of his daughters, Mary, is going to be a Catholic. And when she takes over the throne for her dad, as a Catholic, she's going to start burning Protestant Christians at the stake. She's going to start hunting down Anglicans to kill them. And for that reason, she's going to be known as Bloody Mary. Okay? But eventually, she's going to get sick and die, and her sister Elizabeth, who was raised Protestant as an Anglican, is going to take over the throne, right? And she's going to make sure that England stays Protestant, it stays Anglican, and she's the Queen Elizabeth, that supported Shakespeare and all those writings that I told you guys about earlier. So she'll make sure that England is a Protestant country. But do you guys see the politics of this? I mean, people are killing each other over what religion, what version of Christianity they are. And England's going to be very hostile to Catholics going forward as a result of this whole process, because they're going to be Protestant Anglicans. And then last is an interesting branch of Christianity that forms, again, because people can read the Bible for themselves, all right? And they're going to be known as Calvinists. And the guy who kind of sets the tone for this is a theological leader named John Calvin. Let me pause and let you. John Calvin. Calvinists are here in purple. You see where they started. And by the way, these stripy areas are where there's a mix, correct? Okay, where there are some Catholics and some Protestants, like some Catholics and then some Lutherans, for example, or some. Notice in England, they officially became all Anglican Protestants. So like there was not much of a mix there. But you can see Calvinism catches on in certain areas. John Calvin came out of Switzerland, all right? And his ideas centered around this. Let me, the idea of predestination. Okay. So the idea of predestination, this is like Calvinism 101. I'm giving you the simple, like, it believes that what the Bible says is that God knew you before you were born. So what Calvinists did, what John Calvin did with that, is he basically said that because of that, it says it in the Bible. Remember, Protestants are all about what the Bible actually says, not the stuff added to it, but that Catholics did. John Calvin basically says, look, if God knows us before we were born, that means he can determine ahead of time, he knows ahead of time whether we're all going to heaven or hell. Like our fate is already kind of decided, right? That idea is known as predestination. And I know a lot of you guys are like, why would anybody want to believe that? Like, why would anybody want to believe that even before you're born, it's kind of determined whether you're going to come to Jesus or not. You're going to be either going to heaven or hell. Well, the idea from the Calvinist perspective, what they looked at it is, if I'm chosen to go to heaven, right? I'm a member of what they called the elect. People that are elected or chosen to go to heaven. If I was chosen by God to go to heaven, I can never lose that because he already determined that before I was born. And so I can be secure in knowing that if I'm a believing Christian, like I'll never lose that. Like I'm locked in. I'm a member of this special group called the elect, even before I was born, right? And some of you who are like kind of thinking about all this right now, putting it together, are like, well, wait a minute, Moretti, like, how does somebody know that they're an elect? Well, first of all, it's because they have faith, and they kind of believe God spoke to them and they have faith, but also because of their faith, they're going to act like they have faith. All right. And so if somebody claims to be a Christian and then falls aside, what Calvinists would say is he never was a Christian to begin with. Right. He like dabbled in it, he tinkered with the Christian life a little, decided it wasn't for him. And so he was chosen even before he was born to go to hell. All right. But I am chosen to go to heaven because look at the way I act. It's proof of my faith, right? And so I was chosen ahead of time. Well, you know, that's a very unpopular belief amongst other Protestants, much less the Catholic Church, who thinks that your actions are part of what gets you there. Like for a Calvinist, it's the complete opposite. Your faith gets you to heaven, and your actions prove that you have faith. Okay, and that it was all chosen ahead of time. God knew that you were predestined to go to heaven or not. Okay. And I know a lot of you right now, like stop the video wherever you need to, go back and look at it again. If you miss something that I say as we go. So let me finish up with a little bit about how the Catholics respond to all of this, because the Catholic Church is not just going to be like, all right, you Protestants are correct. Like, we screwed up. We were shady. We were greedy. We were selling indulgences, blah, blah, blah. You win. That's not going to happen. And so the Catholics start to fight back in what is known as the Counter-Reformation. Okay? Counter-Reformation. The Catholics are going to try and regain their lost power, or at least prevent it from going any further away from them. One of the ways they're going to do that so this is this last section. One of the ways they're going to do that is through the Council of Trent. Okay? They're going to hold this big meeting. And at that meeting, they're going to put together these points. Now, if you guys were with me in class right now, I would ask these questions for you to talk about as we go. But since you're not, the idea is like only the Catholic interpretation of the Bible is to be accepted. Any other Christian's interpretation was wrong or would be labeled as a heretic. Okay, so they're deciding this at the Council of Trent. The Catholics reaffirm that faith and good works are needed for salvation. It's not enough to just have faith or read the Bible on your own. You still have to listen to the priest. You have to take the sacraments. You still need us. That's basically what the Catholic Church is saying. You still need us. Right? The Bible and Catholic tradition were equal in authority for guiding your life. Martin Luther said, no, all you need is the Bible. Sola fide, baby. Or that's faith alone. My bad. Sola scriptura, baby. That's all you need. Right? And like the Catholics are like, no. You still need us. You still need us. Notice this last one, though. They don't want to admit they're wrong on indulgences. They're like, look, all right, indulgences just for making money are no good. But if you buy an indulgence because you really like want to do something for the Lord, that's okay. Okay? So the Catholic Church doesn't want to give up on indulgences. And this meeting kind of lays this out, okay, as things that they do, the Catholic Church, to try and like prevent their power from eroding any further. Secondly, they set up this thing called the Inquisition. And I hinted at this earlier in the lesson. Okay, it's somewhere at the beginning. The Inquisition was a court that they brought people in, and you can see they brought in to terrorize. The idea was to terrorize Jews, Muslims, and Protestants into abandoning their own religious practices and accepting the Catholic Church, okay? And they would bring you in, your neighbor or something would turn you in, and you'd be sitting there before like a court filled with like bishops and stuff, and they would hand a sentence down. Is this guy guilty of worshiping in a non-Catholic way? And if so, we could sentence you to go to jail, we could sentence you to be tortured, or even to death, and if you just refuse to change your ways. And what they're going to do is, the types of torture they came up with was unbelievable. They would sometimes they would take people they found guilty at the Inquisition, and they would tie their arms behind their back, then run the rope up through the ceiling, and then pull the person up like that, right, until their arms pull out of their sockets, right, as a torture device. They would do stuff called breaking on the wheel, where they would tie somebody on a wagon wheel, and then have the torturer or executioner come up and with a blunt instrument break all your bones slowly, right? Or they would put you in the Iron Maiden, which was a case that had spikes about that thick. And they put you in there and close it, and then your blood would slowly drain out of your body. I mean, these are terrible forms of torture. And you're like, whoa, Moretti, aren't these people religious? I mean, this is the Catholic Church. But from their perspective, they're causing you pain now by torture so that you accept the Catholic religion, which will save your soul. So they're going to torture you now in order to save your soul. That's their perspective on this, all right? So the Catholic version of Christianity ain't going anywhere. They're fighting back hard, right? The Council of Trent, the Inquisition. And then finally, one thing that they did is they created missionary groups. Missionaries are people that go overseas, right, to convert people to a religion. And the Catholic version of this, they were known as Jesuits, the Society of Jesus. I like saying it like this: Jesuits. Try that at home. Jesuits. The Jesuits were an order of traveling monks, okay, that would travel overseas and would convert people to the Catholic version of religion. They would go to places like Africa, India, China, Japan, and even North America, where we are today. The guy who set this up was Saint Ignatius of Loyola. You see this? He was the one that put together this order or group of traveling priests known as Jesuits to spread the Catholic version. It's kind of like, look, if people in Europe are going to resist the Catholic religion now because there's this new version called Protestants, and that's splintered into all these other groups, then what we're going to do to keep the Catholic religion alive is we'll fight it in Europe, we'll still be there, but we're going to spread it to other places in the world also. And we're going to convert the rest of the world to our version. That's the goal of the Jesuits, okay? And Ignatius of Loyola led this effort. So you guys ever wonder why there's so many things around here in the Chicago area that are named after Loyola, right? There's a Catholic school called Loyola Academy. There's a college that is Loyola that is downtown Chicago. There is a Loyola hospital. There's Loyola, why? Because, grasshoppers, one of the places that these traveling priests called Jesuits went was North America, and they came to the Great Lakes region. That means Illinois. That means Chicago area. And so they had a lot of influence in this area. And so there's a lot of things named after Saint Ignatius of Loyola, because the Catholics came here to convert people to their religion hundreds of years ago. Okay, they were trying to convert Native Americans, etc. So you see that the Catholics are not going to take all of this lying down. They're going to, fight back. And so what do you got? You effectively have in Europe now, a Europe that is divided, sometimes is divided country to country, because some countries like adopt Protestant versions of Christianity, like the Anglicans did in England, or some of the German states took Lutherans, right? Lutheranism, and some of these countries they stayed Catholic, and so you got all this conflict and war that's going to come out of this, right? Because these countries start to identify with their version of the Christian religion, and it leads to a lot of the fighting and a lot of the upcoming chaos, okay? So it's really a destabilizing effect on Europe that the Protestant Reformation has over time, all right? With that, we'll leave it, and I'll see you guys as soon as I can, all right?